The clinking of expensive crystal echoed through my dining room, followed immediately by a chorus of warm, effortless laughter. I sat quietly at the far end of the long mahogany table, watching my daughter-in-law Sarah hold court over the room. This was my house, a property my late husband and I had paid off over a decade ago. Yet tonight, I felt like an unwanted stranger crashing an exclusive VIP event. My son David sat beside his wife, proudly admiring her, while completely ignoring his empty plate, and the tension radiating from my side of the table. Sarah tapped her silver spoon against her wine glass, demanding attention. The room quieted down almost instantly. "I want to thank everyone for coming to our anniversary dinner," she announced brightly, her eyes scanning the well-dressed guests. "David and I have worked so hard to build such a beautiful life here, and we truly love sharing our home with our friends." Polite applause rippled around the table. Then Sarah glanced in my direction. Her smile remained, but it didn't reach her eyes. "And of course, thanks to Helen for letting us use the space. Honestly," she paused, letting out a sharp, theatrical laugh that echoed far too loudly. "She's not even family anymore. She's basically just our live-in landlord." The room went dead silent. A nervous cough broke from someone near the kitchen before dying away. A few guests stared intently at their mashed potatoes. I didn't look at Sarah. I looked straight at David. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair, suddenly finding the tablecloth fascinating. He didn't correct her. He didn't defend me. He didn't even pretend she had crossed a line. His silence was the only answer I ever needed. I didn't cry. At 66, having survived grief and hardship, I had absolutely no tears left for blatant disrespect. I simply reached for my water glass and stood up. Every eye in the room darted toward me. "Perfect," I replied, my voice steady, calm, and crystal clear. "Then don't ask me for money." Sarah's confident smile vanished instantly. David froze his jaw slightly slack. The heavy, suffocating silence stretched, ruining the festive mood entirely. I placed my glass down, wiped my mouth with a linen napkin, and pushed my chair back. "Please, enjoy the dessert," I added politely. I walked up the stairs, leaving their shattered party behind. Tomorrow, the landlord was taking over. Sunlight streamed through my bedroom window at exactly 6 o'clock, just like every other morning. Usually, this was my cue to head downstairs, brew a large pot of premium dark roast, and start scrambling eggs before David and Sarah woke up for work. For 2 long years, I had treated them like honored guests in my home, assuming my endless hospitality and financial support would foster closeness. I was entirely wrong. Today, I didn't reach for the heavy frying pan. I measured out just enough grounds to make a single cup of pour-over coffee for myself, savoring the rich, quiet aroma in the empty kitchen. I sat at the granite island, opened my tablet, and logged directly into my bank account. First, I canceled the premium cable package. Sarah loved her reality shows, but landlords do not provide luxury entertainment. Next, I changed the Wi-Fi password. The new high-speed router I bought last month was solely in my name, paid from my account. I updated the network settings, saved the changes, and tucked my tablet away just as heavy footsteps sounded on the stairs. David walked in wearing wrinkled sweatpants, rubbing his face. He reached automatically for the coffee carafe. It was empty. "Mom, where's the coffee?" he mumbled, opening the fridge to find no breakfast waiting. "I only made enough for myself," I answered casually, turning a page of my home and garden magazine. "The beans are in the pantry. You know how the grinder works." He stared at me, blinking away his sleepiness. "Are you still mad about last night?" "Come on, Sarah was just joking." "I'm not mad," I replied, taking a slow, deliberate sip of my mug. "I'm just adjusting to my new role." Before he could process that, Sarah shuffled into the kitchen, tapping furiously on her phone screen. David, is the internet down? My phone won't connect at all. I changed the password, I informed her without looking up. Sarah frowned, crossing her arms over her silk robe. Well, what is it? I have a morning meeting. You'll need to set up your own account, I stated evenly. My network is for personal use. Her jaw dropped. David finally realized the shift in the atmosphere. The free ride was officially over. By Wednesday, the tension in the house was thick enough to cut with a dull knife. Sarah had purchased an expensive mobile hotspot, complaining loudly about the unexpected expense every time she passed me in the hallway. I simply smiled, politely, and kept walking. Around noon, I returned from the local supermarket. For 2 years, I had generously stocked the kitchen pantry with organic vegetables, prime cuts of meat, and Sarah's favorite expensive imported cheeses. I paid for absolutely all of it while they conveniently saved their paychecks. This time, I unpacked my groceries and placed them directly into a sleek, locking mini-fridge I had ordered online the previous night, which now sat neatly in the corner of my bedroom. I locked my door, walked downstairs, and left their shelves in the main refrigerator completely bare, save for a half-empty jar of mustard and some wilted lettuce they had bought weeks ago. At dinner time, the expected chaos finally erupted. "Where is all the food?" Sarah's voice carried shrilly up the staircase. I walked down, holding a single plate of baked salmon and roasted asparagus. I sat comfortably at the dining table. David stood in front of the open refrigerator, looking entirely lost. "Mom, did you forget to go shopping?" "I shopped for myself," I said, cutting my salmon carefully. "Since we are strictly functioning as a landlord-tenant arrangement now, you are responsible for your own meals." Sarah stormed into the dining room. "This is ridiculous. We pay you to live here." I chewed, swallowed, and dabbed my mouth. "You pay a small fraction of the utility bills. You have never paid a dime in rent. If you want a full-service bed and breakfast, I suggest you go find one." David rubbed the back of his neck, looking nervously between his wife and me. "Mom, we're saving for a house. You know this. And I fully support your financial goals." I agreed pleasantly. "But my retirement budget no longer includes subsidizing your grocery bills?" Sarah glared at me, grabbed David's arm, and dragged him toward the front door. They ordered takeout that night. It was the first time in 2 years they bought their own dinner, and the silence in the kitchen tasted far better than any meal I had ever cooked. When David and Sarah first moved in, they brought a modest amount of boxes. Slowly, over the months, those boxes exploded across every corner of my house. The living room, once my quiet sanctuary filled with antique bookshelves, and my late husband's favorite leather armchair, had morphed into Sarah's personal storage unit and studio. Piles of her trendy decorative pillows covered my sofa. Her massive ring light and photography equipment for her social media hobby blocked the fireplace. My cherished family photos had been quietly relocated to a dusty drawer in the hallway to make room for her modern, abstract art prints. Thursday morning, the minute their cars pulled out of the driveway for work, I went straight to work myself. I didn't argue with them. I didn't send a warning text. I simply found a stack of sturdy cardboard boxes in the garage and began packing. I carefully folded her pillows, boxed her fragile art, and systematically dismantled the ring light. I carried everything down the hall and stacked the boxes neatly yet firmly inside their bedroom. I retrieved my family photos from the dark drawer and placed them back on the mantel where they belonged. I vacuumed the rug, positioned my husband's chair exactly where it used to be, and opened the blinds to let the morning sun wash over the room. When they returned at 6 o'clock, Sarah dropped her heavy purse in the hallway and froze in her tracks. "What happened to my things?" she demanded, marching into the pristine living room. I looked up from my novel. "I moved them into your private space. You touched my photography equipment. That's incredibly invasive. Leaving your personal clutter in a shared living area is invasive. I corrected my tone, never rising. This is a common space. Going forward, it will remain clear. David stepped in, looking exhausted from his commute. Mom, we just didn't have room upstairs. Can't we compromise? The compromise was letting you stay here rent-free, I pointed out. If your space is too small, you simply have too many things. Sarah spun on her heel and stomped up the stairs. The sound of her slamming the bedroom door rattled the picture frames, but I just turned the page of my book, completely unbothered. Friday brought a harsh new realization for David and Sarah. The professional house cleaner, a luxury I had funded out of my own pocket to keep the peace, did not arrive. By Saturday morning, the shared bathroom upstairs was a disaster, and the kitchen sink was overflowing with their takeout containers and unwashed plates. I washed my single coffee mug, dried it, and put it away. I ignored their mounting mess completely. But the real issue began in the laundry room. For 2 years, my heavy-duty washer and dryer had been running practically non-stop. Sarah insisted on washing her delicate clothes in micro-loads, often running the machines 3 times a day. The soaring water and electricity bills were entirely in my name. That afternoon, I walked into the utility room. I unplugged both machines from the wall and coiled the thick power cords tightly. Then I stepped out, locked the laundry room door behind me, and slipped the only key into my pocket. When Sunday rolled around, Sarah descended the stairs carrying a massive, overflowing basket of clothes. She rattled the laundry room doorknob aggressively. Helen, she called out, entirely abandoning the polite mom she used to fake. The door is stuck. I stepped out of the kitchen, wiping my hands on a fresh towel. It's locked. She dropped the heavy basket on the hardwood floor. Why? Because the machines require maintenance, and I am the one paying for the electricity and water to run them, I explained simply. David appeared at the top of the stairs, frowning. So how are we supposed to wash our work clothes? There is a very nice laundromat 2 miles down the road, I suggested calmly. They are open until 9. You want us to drag our laundry to a public mat like broke college students? Sarah gasped, horrified. I expect you to manage your own household chores, I replied. If you wish to use my appliances, we will need to draft a formal agreement regarding the utility bills. Neither of them responded. Half an hour later, I watched from this living room window as David awkwardly shoved the heavy laundry basket into the trunk of his sedan. Establishing boundaries wasn't about being cruel. It was about stopping the free ride. The concrete driveway of my home was wide enough for 2 cars, but it required a little coordination. My designated spot had always been the right side, allowing me easy access to the side door leading directly into the kitchen. Recently, however, Sarah had started parking her large SUV diagonally across the middle of the driveway, forcing me to park out on the street under the large oak trees which constantly coated my windshield in sticky sap. I had asked her twice to park properly. She had brushed it off both times, claiming she was in a rush. Monday morning, I had an early doctor's appointment. As expected, her SUV was parked haphazardly, hogging the concrete. I didn't knock on her bedroom door to ask her to move. I didn't leave a passive-aggressive note on her windshield. I retrieved my spare keys, walked out to my car, and pulled it directly behind her SUV, blocking her in completely. I locked my doors, pocketed my keys, and took a rideshare to my appointment. At exactly 8:30 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was David. I let it go straight to voicemail. 10 minutes later, he called again. I answered this time. Mom, where are you? He sounded frantic. Your car is blocking Sarah and she has to leave for work right now. I'm at the clinic, I answered calmly. I'll be back in a few hours. She's going to be late. Why didn't you just park on the street like you usually do? Because the driveway belongs to my house, I stated clearly. If she had parked on her side, she wouldn't be blocked. Tell her to take a cab. I hung up before he could argue further. When I returned hours later, my car was exactly where I left it, and Sarah's SUV was still trapped. That evening, she didn't speak a single word to me, but the very next day, her vehicle was parked perfectly on the left side of the driveway. Action always speaks louder than complaints. When my husband was alive, we shared the large master suite on the first floor. After he passed, David convinced me to take the much smaller upstairs guest room. It'll be easier to clean, he had reasoned. Though the real reason was glaringly obvious, Sarah wanted the massive walk-in closet and the double vanity for her endless cosmetics collection. I had given up the space back then to keep the peace. Now, the peace was gone, and I wanted my room back. On a Thursday, David and Sarah left for an overnight corporate retreat. The house was blissfully quiet. At 9 in the morning, a professional moving van pulled into the driveway. I hadn't hired a lawyer or drafted eviction notices. I had simply hired 2 efficient movers. Everything in the master bedroom goes upstairs, I instructed them. Everything in the small room comes down. They worked quickly and carefully. Sarah's expensive designer clothes, her velvet ottoman, and her vanity mirrors were transported to the smaller upstairs room. In return, my solid oak bed frame, my vintage dresser, and my husband's reading chair were returned to their rightful places on the main floor. I spent the afternoon unpacking my clothes into the spacious walk-in closet. The room smelled like fresh pine and old memories. I installed a heavy-duty deadbolt on the door and kept the only key. They arrived back on Friday evening. The heavy thud of suitcases hitting the floor was followed by a sharp intake of breath. "David!" Sarah screeched from the hallway. I opened my door and leaned against the frame. "What did you do?" she demanded, her face flushed red with fury. "I reclaimed my bedroom," I answered. "Your belongings are upstairs. Nothing was damaged." David looked completely defeated. "Mom, you can't just flip the house without telling us." "It's my house, David." I reminded him gently but firmly. "I don't need permission to sleep in my own bedroom. If the arrangement upstairs doesn't suit you, you are free to find one that does." I closed my door and locked it. The atmosphere over the next few days was a freezing cold war. David and Sarah avoided me entirely, slipping in and out of the house like silent shadows. The harsh reality of paying for their own food, managing their own laundry, and living in a noticeably smaller space was clearly taking its toll. On Sunday afternoon, I sat at the kitchen island with a neat stack of papers. When I heard them coming down the stairs, I called out, "David, Sarah, please come here." They walked into the kitchen cautiously. Sarah crossed her arms, instantly defensive. I slid a printed document across the granite counter. "What is this?" David asked, picking it up slowly. "A formal lease agreement," I replied. "You've lived here for 2 years without contributing to the mortgage taxes or major utilities. That arrangement ended the night of your anniversary dinner." Sarah skimmed the document, her eyes widening in shock. $2,000 a month. You're charging us rent. "That is slightly below the market rate for this area," I pointed out. "It includes water and trash. Internet and groceries remain your responsibility." David dropped the paper on the counter. "Mom, we can't afford this. We're trying to build our savings. You have been building your savings by draining mine." I stated, my voice completely steady. "I am retiring soon. I cannot afford to subsidize 2 fully grown adults. Families help each other." Sarah snapped, her usual composed facade cracking. "They do," I agreed. "But families also respect each other. You made it very clear I am not family. I am a landlord, and landlords require rent. I tapped the bottom of the page. You have exactly two choices. Sign the lease and pay the first month's rent by Friday, or you have 30 days to vacate the premises. You would really make your own son leave? David asked, his voice thick with disbelief. I am giving my son the opportunity to stand on his own 2 feet, I answered. I stood up and walked toward my reclaimed bedroom. Take your time. You have until Friday. Friday came and went. No signed lease appeared on the counter, and absolutely no rent money was transferred to my account. I didn't nag them. I simply waited. By Saturday morning, the harsh sound of ripping packing tape echoed down the hallway. They had found a small one-bedroom apartment across town. As Sarah carried her heavy boxes out the front door, she didn't speak a single word to me. The arrogance she wore so proudly at the dinner party was entirely gone, replaced by the exhausting reality of true independence. On their final afternoon, David walked into the kitchen. He placed his spare house keys on the granite island, looking distinctly older. I'm sorry, Mom, he muttered, avoiding my gaze. I let things slide way too far. You got comfortable, David, I said gently. And comfort often makes people blind to who is actually paying for it. He nodded slowly, a flush of genuine shame creeping up his neck. After a quick, awkward hug, he turned and walked out the door for good. The driveway was empty. The free ride was officially over. The moment the moving truck disappeared down the street, I locked the front door. The silence in the house was profound. It wasn't lonely. It was the beautiful sound of absolute peace. Over the next few months, I completely reclaimed my life. The upstairs bedroom became my new watercolor studio. The kitchen stayed immaculate and my grocery bills plummeted. I wasn't a martyr anymore. 6 months later, David invited me to lunch at a modest cafe. Sarah didn't join us. He looked tired, but finally grounded. We're managing, he told me honestly. It's tight, but we're sticking to a strict budget now. When the check arrived, David didn't wait for me to reach into my purse. He immediately pulled out his own wallet and paid the bill. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. I drove home, pulled smoothly into my designated spot in the driveway, and unlocked my front door. Enforcing boundaries hadn't destroyed my family. It had successfully reset it. I poured a glass of wine, sat comfortably in my husband's leather chair, and toasted to the empty, peaceful room. Everything inside this house finally belonged to me, including my respect.